Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. I'm outside of my home today. I'm getting new carpet in the house, and so the house is tore up, stuff is everywhere. And I think today is release day for the 7artisans 85mm 1.8 lens, autofocus lens for Nikon Z mount. And it was sent to me about a week ago, and I've been playing with it off and on for the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 days, so this is not like a long-term review or anything like that, but I do have some first initial impressions. I've been out shooting some comparison videos, or photos and videos for you guys, and I want to kind of give my thoughts on this. Oh, somebody's coming out here. These people pass. 1 second. It's always weird filming in public. See? This is why you need your home office. Well, that was cute. Just a old Polish couple out for a walk. I told her sometimes I come out here to shoot birds, and she thought I meant hunting birds, and that was cruel. I said shooting with my camera. Okay, so we're on the Leica SL2, by the way. I'm using autofocus. I have no clue if I'm in focus, but I'm also at like f18 because I didn't bring an ND filter, and there's that. Other thing is my microphone fell off the top of this, my wind muff, so hopefully the wind's not too bad. Okay, so I get a lot of these third-party Chinese manufacturers sending me lens for test reviews. You see them all over the internet, all over YouTube, and sometimes I'm reluctant to do the reviews because I feel like it's just more shill tube and more me too. But what's interesting to me, and what's getting really interesting to me with mounts that are open, not Canon, but stuff like Sony and Nikon, L-mount, whatever it might be, Fuji, is that these third-party Chinese manufacturers are starting to make some really, really incredible glass and interesting and fun glass for really, really cheap prices, or good, reasonable prices. Lately, obviously, you've heard a lot about Viltrox has been great. Sigma and Tamron are doing great as well. And 7artisans has started making these autofocus lenses. And so when they sent me this 85 1.8 to test out, I said, yeah, I'd love to test it because I'm curious how it would stack up against the 85 1.8S. Now, quick, I guess, disclaimer. 7artisans did send this to me. They have no clue what I'm making or what I'm saying about this lens in this video. I am doing this as a one-take wonder off the cuff, so there's gonna be a little bit of ad lib here. And I was not paid to make this video. I think I have to say that officially as a disclaimer. Also, I wanna say quickly thank you to the person who sent me this 85 1.8S lens, Nikon lens, and also the Nikon Z6 III that I shot these photos on. I'll talk about the Z6 III a little bit at the end of the video, but I quickly want to talk about the comparison of these two lenses. I'll start with the physical features. If you look at these, both their lens caps on, they're pretty much the same size. In fact, the 7artisans lens is a little bit shorter. The second thing is that you'll notice there's a button on the side of the 7artisans lens, a function button that you can program inside the camera. The Nikon lens does not have that. The 7artisans lens has an autofocus manual focus switch, just like the 85 1.8S lens does. But the 7artisans lens also has an aperture ring that it's declicked, smooth. And it does work perfectly with the Nikon Z6 III. It reads perfectly on the back of the camera as you rotate this. And of course you can flip it over to A to put it in automatic mode, which I think allows you to control it on the wheels of your camera. So that's all great. The focus ring obviously is a little bit smaller on this because you have an aperture ring. It's real tight and stiff. Maybe this will loosen up over time. The Nikon one feels a lot bigger, and it's a lot bigger. And ergonomically, the autofocus or the manual focus ring on the Nikon is easier to use and operate. However, rarely ever use it, so I don't know if that's a big selling point or not. Other than that, this lens does come with a lens hood, which I had taken off for the comparison's sake here, but they're pretty similar. It's a metal build, I believe. It's a metal mount. I don't believe it's weather sealed. There's no gasket on the back here, so buyer beware there. And there is a USB-C port right here, if you can see it on the camera, that allows for updates as they probably release firmware updates for this lens. So with all that stuff out of the way, in terms of like weight and size, they're pretty much the same. In fact, I think the Nikon's a little bit bigger and a little bit heavier. If I get the actual specs, I'll put them up on the screen. If I forget to do it in post, then I guess I just forget to do it. But I can tell you, just from a hand test, the Nikon lens is a little bit bigger. Now, when I originally went into this, I expected the 7artisans lens to be inferior in many, many ways. But I'm going to tell you, to get the conclusion off the rip, that's not been the result in my opinion anyways. First of all, everything's operated on the camera as expected. There was an initial little hiccup when I connected it to the Z6 III where it wasn't kind of reading the aperture ring and stuff properly for a second, but then I turned the camera off and back on and it was working fine. So I don't know if that's like a Nikon Z6 III thing or this being third party, but I've had no issues with it since then. And so I don't know what caused that, and I have not been able to repeat it. That's all good. The autofocus has worked fine, it's worked great. And it's just really interesting. I can't tell if this is more of a testament to 7artisans getting their crap together, or if it's to Nikon with such an adaptable open mount system. You've heard stories of like the Tech Art adapters with M-mount lenses adapting really well to Nikon, and I gotta imagine how much of that is the case here with the 7artisans lens. With all that being said, there's a couple things optically I wanna tell you about. The first is minimum focus distance. I took a few pictures at minimum focus distance here. The 7artisans lens, at least in practice, from what I can tell, has a closer minimum focus distance than the Nikon lens. So here's a couple pictures showing the differences between the minimum focus distance. The other thing that I noticed between these two is that the bokeh is a bit different. The Nikon has a bit more of a smoother bokeh, maybe, if you want to say it that way, whereas the 7artisans also has a very smooth bokeh. However, in the right circumstances, you can see a little bit of the swirliness in the background. This is a personal preference thing. I'm starting to lean more and more towards enjoying some character bokeh. But the thing about the 7artisans lens is not always offensive. It's actually really smooth most of the time. So I think that's really good. The other thing I noticed with this lens, and I'm noticing this more and more of the newer third-party Chinese lenses, they used to be so bad, and probably still are in a lot of lenses, but so bad with flare and like glare and getting like purple and green rings and if you shot into the sunlight. This does a very good job with it. Here's a couple photos I took shooting directly into the sunrise the other morning, and you can tell the ghosting and flaring is pretty well controlled, especially for what you expect to have a third-party kind of Chinese lens. And so I was surprised. Someone's hunting, speaking of shooting birds. But I was surprised that this did not have the crazy flaring and that gets all crazy on these 7artisans lenses. I've had older 7artisans manual focus lenses, and there must be some coating on this that makes it a lot better. So I was surprised with that. I also put this lens on the Z6 III and ran some video tests. Worked great. It worked fine. So that was exciting as well. And what's kind of interesting with this lens versus this lens, now, don't kill me, this is subjective, but it feels like the 7artisans lens has a little bit more micro contrast, kind of has a bit more of that 3D pop to it. This might be a little bit more clinical, a little bit more perfect, if you will. And I think it's gonna come down to your personal preference. The other thing I noticed is that shooting wide open, the 7artisans lens does have a bit more vignetting than the Nikon lens. Again, easily correctable in post, but if you're landscape or whatever, you know, maybe it's something to consider. And last but not least, for portraits, I thought they both did a really, really good job. Here's a picture of my son, one shot with the Nikon, one shot with the 7artisans. I think they both look fantastic. And so I'm not gonna go in there and pixel people like crazy on these, but at the end of the day, the net result of this is I'm starting to feel like the newer third-party lenses, and almost any lens you get these days might have their different characteristics, but they're all getting really, really good. The fact that you can get a third-party metal, you know, kind of, I would call it fully featured lens minus weather sealing, which is a big one I know, for, you know, I think this is priced on this is gonna be a few $100. They haven't told me yet, but I'll go look it up because it's being released today. It's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible. And so I would say if you got this lens, I don't think you would feel disappointed in the end. In fact, I found myself liking the images out of this in some ways better than the images out of this. There were trade-offs, of course. And I would generally say native mount, native glass is the way to go because, well, obviously be supported fully by the camera manufacturer. But in saying that, I was very impressed with this. So I'm not trying to shill this out. I don't have a referral link down below. I don't care if you buy this lens. I really don't. But I will tell you that if you're on a budget and you want to shoot portraits, this is a very viable option. You can go ahead and go and get it. This is great too. A bit more money, but this is also great. And with that, I want to kind of finish on a few other notes. First of all, the Nikon Z6 III. Awesome camera. Everything works great. Very compelling. Feels like a Nikon Z6 II, Z7 II in your hands. Awesome camera. Literally works really, really well. I don't know if they changed the color science in this a little bit, but I'm really liking the straight out of camera images I'm getting from this, so that's something to kind of write down. And the last thing is this. I have one more third-party lens for Fuji that I'm being asked to test. And I really feel like I'm hitting the end of the road with some of these. They're all good. They're all acceptable. They have their trade-offs, like I mentioned, but it's like I'm a broken record. And I also feel like in the process, people think I'm just doing this for clicks or for views, and I don't like that. And just as it goes, the gear review stuff is getting really old. And so I think for the month of October, I might turn into kind of a vlogtober. I might do a bit more of a come with me, a bit more about my life, what's going on, not just all photography. I might do a little bit of a change on this channel, but it'll still be photography focused and some behind the scenes stuff. So you might see videos off my iPhone. You might see videos off of another camera for vlogging. I'm gonna shoot some more film. I just got a bunch of HP5 and Cinestill 800T, and we're gonna have some fun with that. But nonetheless, guys, I really appreciate you being here. This is a one take wonder review. If you have questions, hit me up below and I'll try to answer them. But I would just tell you from my initial 1 week of testing with this lens, I was surprised by the 7artisans lens, and they've made a lot of improvements from the older lenses they used to send me. And the build quality feels good. It's got the features that you might want, minus weather sealing. Autofocus worked fine. Colors, sharpness, a little bit of vignetting, but like, I was okay with it. For me, a hobbyist, I was okay with it. I'm really curious to see what other reviewers say, because they might say it's amazing or they might bash on it. I don't know. But overall, I'd give this thing like an 8.5 out of 10, especially for its price point. So take that with a grain of salt, but that's kind of how I feel about it. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Probably another third-party review for Fuji, and then we'll see what happens after that. Then October starts, Vlogtober. See ya.